Hello and welcome to the shop. I have with me today a Slimline Pro click pen. I really like this pen because of the click mechanism, and I get a lot of requests from people for a set of Slimline pens that both have a clicker, because you know on the Slimline, the true 7mm Slimline, the mechanical pencil has a click button, but the ink-based pen only is a twist mechanism. A lot of people want to carry their pen and pencil in their pocket. They want to be able to pull it out, click it, and use it. They don't want to have to employ two hands to activate their pen. This is the thinnest Slimline click pen I can find. It also comes with a click mechanical pencil. So if you're interested, you can go to Penn State's catalog and just look up Slimline Pro and you'll find these pen and pencil sets. What I'm going to do today is disassemble this pen. We're going to eliminate the center ring, cut a custom 3/8 inch tube, and turn a new blank onto that tube and reassemble a modified Slimline Pro click pen. Disassembling the back half of this pen proved to be a little more difficult than I had expected. Evidently, I had some trouble when I put this together, and I must have put some CA glue in the tube to glue this mechanism in, because it was virtually impossible to remove from the tube. I did have a second Slimline Pro that a young boy actually broke in half. He picked it up and bent it like this and broke the pen at one of my shows. So I went ahead, and the back half of it I was able to grab with the pliers, just wiggle and pop right out. And then the little plastic piece, I was able to take a punch and by hand just push it out of the tube. So we have all the parts we need now to build our modified Slimline Pro click ink pen. I made a mistake earlier when I told you that this pen required a 3/8 inch tube. It actually requires an 8mm tube. Looking at the instructions, I see that the front and back blank of the tube are each 2 1/32 of an inch in length. Multiplying that by 2, we get 4 1/16 of an inch. We grab the center band, and it is exactly 1/8 of an inch in length, so we add 1/8 of an inch to that distance, and we come out with 4 3/16 of an inch. I've marked the tube at exactly 4 3/16. I've gone ahead and got it mounted in my pipe cutter, and now what I'm going to do is just get it cut. I'll clean this up with one of my punches, lightly sand the end just to take the burr off, and we're ready to go ahead and start building our blank. Now that I have the tube cut to the proper length and I've got the end cleaned up, it's time to turn our attention to the blank. I've gone ahead and measured the blank and cut it to where it's just slightly larger or slightly longer than the tube. What that's going to allow me to do is take this bit to the drill press and chuck it up so that it just barely clears the end of the blank. Here's what I was referring to when I talked about chucking the bit up. You can see that when I bottom the Jacobs chuck out on my blank, there's just a tiny little bit of the bit that's going to protrude through the bottom of the blank. So that should allow me to drill the full length of this blank. At this point, my press can't move any farther up or down, so what I'm going to do is adjust my blank up to the bit so that I can finish out the last little section of the blank. Make sure there's no drag in there so that the bit is perfectly straight, and let's finish this out. And with that, we have a hole. Now this blank, you can see, kind of curves. So I came out close to the edge, but I should have plenty of room for clearance. What I'm gonna do is, since there's just a tiny bit left on this blank, I'm gonna go ahead and start the press and just clean it up like that. Now we're gonna head over to the table, and we're gonna go ahead and glue our blank, or our tube, into this blank. I'm ready to glue my tube into my blank. You can see that I've already roughed it up with a little bit of sandpaper. And the only thing I want to be careful of is this is the end that I entered with the drill bit. And because this is a segmented blank, it's not perfectly straight. So I came out kind of close to the edge. Not going to be an issue. Still plenty of meat to be able to finish the pin. But I want to make sure I insert the tube from this end. So let's lay everything out. Get our glue. And I'm going to use a lot of CA glue for this. And I'm just going to make sure that it's just perfectly flush with the end of the blank. And then we'll leave it to dry. Instead of barrel trimming this blank, I opted to take it to my belt sander and I sanded both ends perfectly perpendicular with the tube. And now it's ready to be turned. This blank is exactly 2 3/16 of an inch in length. I think the blank turned out really nice. Isn't that beautiful? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to sand through the grits. And each time I get to a new grit, I'm going to flip it. And what that does, that just allows me to more evenly sand it, because as you're cutting with the tool, you'll lay the grain down. When you flip the blank over and you sand, it raises that grain up and cuts it off. Each time you do that, the grain gets smaller and smaller. It makes the blank smoother. I'm not going to film the sanding process, but I'll come back and show you what it looks like right before I clean it up and put a finish on it. I promised you a peek at the blank right before finishing. I just concluded my sanding. I'm ready to put a little denatured alcohol on here and start applying the CA finish. Start off with the denatured alcohol. I like to wipe with the grain, especially on woods like oak that have a lot of fiber, because that gets anything that is in the grains, any dust that might be in the grain of the wood, out. Now we'll go ahead and turn the lathe on. Looks amazing. I'm going to let it sit for a little bit, because one thing I always like to do when I use denatured alcohol is I like to let it sit and make sure the alcohol is fully evaporated before I apply a CA finish, because if you don't do that, you can get some hazing in your CA. You want see how it's evaporating? You want all of that moisture gone. So I'm just going to turn the lathe on, let it spin and air dry for a couple of minutes. I thought I would go ahead and film the first coat of CA going on the pen, because that's kind of like the reveal of a cutting board. It just sort of, the wood pops. Then I'll turn the camera off and I'll go ahead and put the rest of the CA on, get the pen polished up, and I'll come back, show it to you right before we assemble it into the kit. Isn't that amazing? I just love how it looks right after that first coat goes on. We're going to end up applying probably 5 to 6 coats of this thin CA, and then I'll come back and put a couple of coats of medium. And what I'll be doing with the medium is I'll be watching the grain, and I want to make sure all of the grain is filled. You don't want to leave any grain, because if you do, when you put the polish on, the polish gets into that grain and then you have white specks in your finish. I promised you one more look at this blank before I put it into a kit. I think it looks absolutely fabulous. It's been sanded down to 400. I then applied 6 coats of thin CA and 5 or 6, I don't remember, coats of medium CA in an effort to level all of the grain. I then put the standard bushings, the turning bushings, back on the blank, and I micro meshed it all the way up to 12,000. It looked really nice after the micro mesh process. Then I grabbed some Plastex polish and I twice applied Plastex polish and buffed it off. Now I'm going to take it over to my assembly table and we're going to put the pen kit with this blank. Now that we've got the blank turned, let's go ahead and put this pen together. I had to work the button a couple of times to get everything to seat into place. The pen is working great now. What happened is the 3 little white pieces, the click mechanism, needed to go all the way back into the back end of the pen, and it took a little bit before it worked its way back there, but now you can see it's working great. I am really happy with how this pen turned out. The mechanism works great. The pen looks fantastic. The blank is just stellar. Isn't that beautiful? I hope you like this project. I had a great time doing it. I've been thinking about this one for a long time, and it just took me a while to get around to it. I'd really like to thank you guys for hanging out with me. I want you to know that you are always welcome in my shop. Come back and see me again real soon and let me know what you think about this pen. Take care, everybody.